So firstly, we are working with the businesses because there are about 300 million businesses we know nothing about. This is businesses around the world.
Welcome back to the Clean Techies podcast, where we interview climate tech founders and VCs to discuss all things building and investing to solve the biggest challenge of our generation, climate change. In today's episode, I speak with Tee Ganbold, the co-founder of OpenESG, on what she's doing in the ESG tech space. They have created an incredible tool that operates like ChatGPT, but specifically designed and trained on the corporate sustainability data of companies that publish that data. Instead of spending time researching a company's ESG data and commitments, you can simply ask OpenESG and you have detailed data at your fingertips, along with the precise references to the underlying data, which I find pretty fascinating. So you can go right to the source and see where it's coming from. No hallucinations. Tee has a really great story overall, just generally very fascinating, coming from Mongolia, being raised in London, starting a few different companies, living around the world, and now choosing to build OpenESG in New York City specifically. We had a really great conversation today, so it's exciting to be able to share this with you. And if you're able, I do encourage you to go to openesg.com, while you're listening to the episode and play around with their tool. Really, really fascinating. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, and you can use it for free today. So without any further delay, enjoy the episode. All right, welcome to the show, Tee. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I guess let's just start things off right away by telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you came from and how do you end up in doing what you're doing today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I started this journey when I was a student, and I was brought up in England. Hence why I speak like this, watching BBC News every day to learn English. But I used to go back to my home country, Mongolia, where I was brought up. I was born. Ulaanbaatar, our capital. Every time I used to go back, I used to have smoke in my face. And it made me question why and what stage of industrialization Mongolia was in and what sort of energy we used. And I found out that 90% of Mongolian energy, or Ulaanbaatar's energy, was coming from coal. And unsurprisingly, and actually I find it unsurprising because of many cultural and political and economic reasons, it hasn't changed. And Mongolia is not the only country that is operating like that. So I wrote my thesis on alternative energy, how the US is transitioning to a much more diverse energy strategy, really for self-sufficiency purposes, and then worked at an investment bank looking at alternative shipping, mining, oil services for a Norwegian investment bank as my first job. And then I had a good look at myself and said, I'm an entrepreneur. I know what I really care about. And so I built my first sustainable brand when I was 23. I went and lived in Mongolia, worked on the factory floor, went and spent time with the herders to build a sustainable cashmere brand from Mongolia to give value back to Mongolians, Mongolian herders, Mongolian suppliers of cashmere. And I learned so much in that process. I also learned what I didn't know. And when you're young, it's great, you have all this ambition, but you also realize what you don't know. So I went back into industry, but this time I went into tech. I decided I wanted to know how to engage my audience. I wanted to know everything about technology. So a little bit like the book by Ayn Rand, I decided to go and learn from the best in data analytics and actually what is now AI. Early on, it was really technology for the sake of communication. So worked at a company called Cambridge Analytica when I was 24 and was working with some of the largest enterprises in understanding how to engage their audiences, retain customers.
Hey there. Quick break to remind any founders or VCs listening, if you are looking for deal flow, seeking to raise funding, looking for partners to help service your needs, or perhaps you're looking for corporate investment partners, feel free to reach out to us through our Slack channel, which can be found in the description. Because we meet a lot of people in this space, we set aside time each week to make introductions to the various people that we encounter. This is something we do free of charge in order to help these incredible companies solving climate change to scale. Looking forward to hearing from you in the Slack channel.
And then the co-founder of Ethereum approached me when I was 25. And this is before the craziness. And I have a strong alignment with the principles of the Ethereum community. So at 26, I went back to my roots and created a company called Clear AI. I was 26 with some amazing technologists, data scientists, machine learning engineers, knowledge graph engineers, and we created what is called supply chain optimization tools to eradicate waste in the food supply chain. And we were working with Nestle in Canada to help understand where consumers want certain products, and looked at local data, helped the buyers, the retailers, know what to buy, and then feed that back to Nestle. So no one's buying things they don't need to. And that's how you cut waste. And there's a lot of it. A third of every food on this planet created is wasted, to give you an example. And then finally, the company, we paused during COVID and had a lot of time to think, go back to the drawing board. And this time, we learned a lot about what we could do and what we couldn't. And what we realized is that we have a fragmentation problem. So sustainability, climate, ESG is a massive category. People are doing so many amazing things in silos. And we just need to bring it all together. Pre-LinkedIn, we did not know who we were sitting next to. We had CVs flying around, probably in WhatsApp, the WhatsApp equivalent of the time in MSN Messenger. And what we realized is that we need to create a single platform to bring everyone together. And that's what we're doing at OpenESG. We're bringing everyone in the community together because we believe we can solve the climate and sustainability challenges. We also are pro-business. So we want to help businesses do amazing things because they're the people who can really change the needle, move the needle, so that we as consumers can go to a shop, the business has already thought about which material has been used. I drink coffee from this coffee mug, and they've already done the hard work, my coffee shop, to make sure this is a product that's really well sourced. That's how it should be. So we've got this amazing team, which I'll go into, but former Spotify, Siri, board directors to former World Economic Forum, International Olympic Committee, Ethereum name service, consensus. I mean, the team are so special, and I wouldn't be able to do this, of course, without them. So I'm really speaking today on behalf of them, and I really am excited to share this story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is really fascinating. There's some things that you mentioned I want to just we don't have to necessarily talk about them too much, but I think it was interesting you pointed out that the US was making a transition to renewables and kind of just various energy sources for a self-sufficiency purpose. And I think that a lot of times it's overlooked the importance of renewables just from that perspective, right? It's not only is it cheaper energy in most cases and it's the best and cleanest, it's also about sovereignty, right? National sovereignty, which is a lot of countries, I think, as the world begins to fragment more, perhaps, I think more countries are going to be considering that. And I'd like to go, you have a really interesting career journey up to this point. I think it's pretty fascinating to hear as somebody who is, very early in my career still. And I'd be curious to hear if you could walk us through some of I guess, how you navigated the critical moments in your journey of deciding to become an entrepreneur. So how, what was the internal battle like? Like, oh, should I really leave my good paying job to go do this thing? What really was the pushing factor, and what advice would you offer to other people who you think are going through a similar kind of moment in their career? Hey there. Are you building a climate tech business and looking for very specialized talent? Consider reaching out to our sponsors, NextWave Partners. NextWave are experts in talent acquisition, recruitment, and retention across the climate tech, renewables, and ESG spaces globally. So if your team is growing or you're looking to make a career change yourself, feel free to reach out to NextWave at next-wavepartners.com or reach out to one of their consultants directly via their LinkedIn page.
I definitely think it's so fantastic to work with amazing people in large organizations and also high growth organizations. I've done that and I love it. I got so much training in my formative years, and I saw, companies go from 0 to 1. Consensus was 100 people, then 1,200 in such a short period of time. And so it is fantastic to see that. It's fantastic to be part of it. You meet the most amazing people. It's so creative, and you have this global network. So I think it's really important to go and do that and be disciplined, turn up on time, all the good stuff. But I do think if you have a particular problem you want to solve, the itch just doesn't go away, because it is something so fundamental that if you care about something so important, for me, it was, I think we can change supplier behavior, because suppliers are what create certain products. And if we create the right incentives, really, in the global economy, where buyers want positive, positive for the planet products and positive for the people products, then suppliers will have to act that way. So when you become obsessed with something, that's when you should absolutely go for it, because it is so all-consuming and it is so beautiful. It is like a beautiful relationship with something that you love so much and you want to solve. And so but I really, really encourage people to go and learn from amazing people, and then meet amazing people and take away experiences from it, and then apply what you want, what the amazing things, and maybe some of the things you don't want to do yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really helpful to hear that. I mean, a lot of people want to do something, but they're afraid to do it or whatnot. But if you really focus on the problem and you can find a solution, you should go and do it. I think it's also important. I really appreciate you sharing, because a lot of people, especially early on, have a substantial amount of anxiety when it comes to deciding what to do, or just generally speaking in their career, because they want it to be a straight line. There's so many pressures from other, parents or colleagues or things like that, people around you, that it's important to recognize that even if you quote unquote do the right thing and do the thing everybody else wants you to do, your career is definitely still not going to be a straight line. So do the thing that, helps you get out of bed in the morning and makes you really excited. Okay, this is very good. So let's go on to talk a little bit more about Open ESG. So you've kind of described it very briefly for us as a sort of like way to help understand who else is out there in the space. But can you give us kind of a more in-depth version of what is Open ESG?
I will, and I just want to add that sometimes that necessity is really important in becoming an entrepreneur. When something doesn't exist, or when you identify a gap and you see that it is necessary to fill it, you should go and do it. And that's what we are doing at Open ESG. We realize that there are some incredible companies out there, and there are some incredible companies already doing amazing things. But what we realized is that there are some companies that are struggling. So let's take S&P 500 companies. They get, bashed by, let's take Elon Musk, to give you an example. A lot of people and current rating systems really bring his company down, Tesla down, and because of certain social factors from an environmental social governance perspective. We think that it should not be like that. We believe that in order to have progress, we can have measurements, absolutely. So what we do at OpenESG is give people a sustainability ID. So you can have a health check on how you're doing as a company. And it is important to know, this is where the standards are. You can also see where you're not doing well, and you get an idea of how to improve. So we have a way to help companies improve and be better. So let's say Elon Musk wanted to be our customer. We can say, look, here's where you're at, and here's how you can improve. But he's not paying a large consultancy to do this. It doesn't take a lot of time. Literally, his chief sustainability officer can sign up for free today and get a health check. And if he wants to, he can publish it to the world and say, hey, this is where Tesla's at. And there's no judgment. Not only that, we also verify information. So a lot of issues in the current system of, let's say, ESG, are that you cannot trust the information. That's really the secret in this industry. And the reason you cannot, and I'll give you an example, FTX got a really high governance score, so G score in the ESG. And no one had decided to do any due diligence to see if he has a board. So that's an example of let's just do our basic homework, double check. Let's go back to principles. Let's check how a company is doing. Let's make it free and accessible for everyone to check how they're doing, or the company to see how they're doing. If they're happy with it, they can publish it. And if their customer or their investor or someone in the community that is important to them, an important stakeholder, wants them to get verified, they should. So we really push it to when it is necessary, almost pay as you go, rather than here's a payment all the time to even get started. We've eradicated that cost, the upfront bit. So that's how we're changing the system. But with generative AI, this year, literally generative AI has completely changed the entire game. Generative AI has meant that you can find the most sustainable companies in the world, even S&P 500 companies. We've trained our data on S&P 500 companies, but our vision for it is that large companies can go all the way down their supply chain, find the most sustainable supplier of, let's say, coffee beans. And with a chat interface, everyone's been probably fiddling with ChatGPT and Bard, and it allows you to really find what you're looking for. But we go so deep in our category. We go deep in sustainability, climate, and ESG information. So you get exactly the answer you're looking for. So all the people, Silas, that you work with, or the executives, for example, we give them superpowers, because when they go to do their job, instead of spending all their time finding information, we give them the information to them at their fingertips and a reference to where that has come from. So there's no such thing as hallucination. They can do their jobs better. We're also starting to do autofill of clauses for report writing. So you can put standards in there, you can put legislation, and you can autofill according to that legislation. It is a game changer. Literally, we're living in such a different era, and we fundamentally believe that we're going to be able to solve this problem by giving everyone the tools to solve it. We can solve it together.
Hey there, thanks for listening to this episode. If you made it this far, it's likely that you're enjoying the show, so wanted to ask your help. If you're enjoying it, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and share with somebody in the same industry who might find this interesting. And if you're interested in getting summaries of these episodes, go subscribe to our newsletter that comes out on LinkedIn and Substack. Links can be found in the description. Thanks for your help in growing the reach of this show. Yeah, understood. I think it's very important, obviously, the enabling factor and helping to make the barriers low, because, I've had a lot of companies come to us and say, oh, we want to hire a head of sustainability or a sustainability analyst for our company. And then when they start getting down the search, like, oh, wait a minute, how much do I got to pay? And then, wait a minute, they're going to need to build a team. That's kind of crazy. And then they just bail, right? Because it's too much of a barrier to entry sometimes for what the CEO thinks it has to be done or whatnot. And then they realize, wow, this is actually quite a lot. So if you can remove those barriers to entry, it's very, easy to catch fire and get more people doing it. And obviously, that's what we need. We need more people doing it in order to actually have an effective outcome. So I guess the big question I have is you mentioned Fortune 500 companies, for example, but and big companies like Tesla, but who are the users, the ideal users of this platform?
So we're actually going directly to the buyers. So the incentive model for the buyers is very clear. So there's regulation, there's consumer demand, there's a lot of demand for the buy side in the US, for example. And US companies are actually far ahead. American companies actually comply with laws and regulations and very much take it seriously, because otherwise you get sued in America. In other parts of the world, it might be a little bit lenient, let's say, which we think is a problem. And of course, we'd like to change behavior over time, but we operate in America because we believe that American businesses are taking it seriously. So the American business, let's say, sends the sustainability ID to all their suppliers. And of course, their suppliers are global. So that's what's amazing about our platform. We get global information. We've already built the platform so we can ingest a lot of information for the large corporate. And what we do then is make it understandable for the CEO. So the CEO or anyone in the C-suite who should have this information can then interface with information on their most sustainable suppliers, who is not doing well, just any bit of information so that they have it at hand. Not only that, but we're going to get to the point we're going to be able to auto write reports. So it writes reports according to a particular ask. And that's how sophisticated it's becoming.
Mm-hmm. I guess what my thing is, once you get a lot of companies on here and generally speaking, it becomes usable. And I'm assuming there's also an opportunity for the general public to use this and to be like, oh, like what's the most sustainable coffee shop in my neighborhood? So things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so firstly, we are working with the businesses because there are about 300 million businesses we know nothing about. This is businesses around the world. That is so shocking. So some of the incumbents that are out there, they've scratched the surface. They've only been managed to get about 100,000 businesses on their platform. And for us, we looked at all the friction points and we've eradicated it. We've focused on how to eradicate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I guess my point of the question then is once you can get everybody on this, do you foresee any particular second or third order kind of consequences of what will actually happen? Do you see anything that you're noticing in the data now, or that you have a hunch on where you say, hey, once consumers have access to this stuff, I think this or that will happen?
So we believe that firstly, we're working with the businesses, then we will integrate with B2C platforms. We cannot do both. Where going directly to consumers is a lot of work, and there are existing platforms out there that have their relationships with consumers, and we'd rather work with them. The consequences are very positive. Having insight as to the coffee shop you go to quite regularly, let's say Starbucks, and the consequences of learning the amazing things they're doing is pretty positive. You might want to go back even more. Think about all the loyalty points. And we think we can enrich the existing customer relationships with large businesses. And not only large, but small businesses too. Because if you are small and you're family-owned business and you're doing all the right things, you should get more customer retention by doing positive things for the planet and for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's especially right now, the thing that I'm fascinated by is how the companies who are doing sustainable things will have an advantage for a while until it becomes mainstream, right? And then you basically have a disadvantage for being brown, or being not green, right? Not sustainable. So I think it's in everybody's best interest to jump on the wave now while they have the opportunity to be making maybe a little extra profit, even hypothetically, right? Or getting more customers from the neighbor. um Very cool. So I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I'm really curious to understand in particular from being, having lived around the world and built businesses around, why specifically, you mentioned America already, but why specifically New York for, building this? I'm kind of curious if there's any particular reason for focusing here, because, we've had these discussions, I've had these discussions where it's like, okay, what is the most, what is the Silicon Valley of climate or whatnot, right? Where's everybody at? And I wouldn't necessarily first thought be New York. So I'm kind of curious to understand why New York.
So New York was, we chose New York as a team because there's so much, there's this concentration of capital, there's a concentration of course, capital markets, but also there's a concentration of the largest law firms, there's a concentration of some of the largest companies in the US, which are multinationals based in New York. So for us, it is such a clear area to focus on. We as a team are very global and we have such a global mindset. But for us, New York makes a lot of sense because of the concentration of people being there. Not only that, but this year, the wildfires in Canada woke up everyone in New York. Suddenly, all New Yorkers who are talking about climate change, they realize it's not something that they can ignore now. No one on this planet can. It is not possible. There are hurricanes in California all the time. There are fires across Greece. This is so global, and it can impact us, our families, our communities anytime. This is also not something that's an intellectual discussion anymore. This is very real. Capital is at risk. There are real businesses at risk because of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. There's a number of interesting points you bring up, but I guess I'd be curious. Would you say that you think New York is a place that you would encourage other climate tech founders if they're considering to set up, depending on of course their niche, right? Would you encourage them to consider New York as a place to do so because of those reasons you mentioned?
I definitely think New York is, for any founder, they should be where their customers are, because you should be in front of your customers, speaking to them, updating them. You should have a close relationship with your customers. So absolutely, wherever your customers are, be there. If your customers are, of course, somewhere else in the world, be there also.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the mindset is that it's very now willing, and there's a understanding in American corporations that it is so important. So our chief product officer was at a conference in Seattle last week, and he identified that every corporate, while you think AI is the largest topic of the town, actually it's sustainability. And every executive is trying to figure it out. It's all, very bureaucratic at the moment, but they want to get to actually solving the problems because they know it's so important for their customers, for anyone they're serving. They want to also, and their shareholders. Not only that, to give you a deeper example, one of the publicly trading American logistics companies that I know pretty well, and the chief strategy officer said to me, T, I spend so much of my time writing reports. I do not have time to go and actually do the things I'm meant to do. The what is it called at the back of a truck? Where
The trailer?
the exhaust. No, the exhaust.
Oh, the exhaust. Yeah, yeah.
So he was saying that he identified a technology that eradicates the fumes coming out of the exhaust. And he said, T, I'd rather be putting that on every truck and making sure it's implemented, because that would make the true measurable impact. So now we want to actually get every chief sustainability officer doing the things they were hired to do, go and change the company for the better so it actually can last. Because really now it's a matter of who can actually implement the things they are writing about, and how do we help them to do that? Firstly, we need to help them save time on writing reports and a lot of the bureaucracy so that they can go and implement.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good point. Obviously, there are there's reasons to have all of these, checks in place, because you need to make sure the data is accurate. You need to, have it true, especially if you miscommunicate, the ICC might be knocking on your door. So you got to be careful. But it is a very good point that there's a lot of these people who are hired to do sustainability things, and I hear it from the candidates I talk to all the time that, like, hey, I just want to actually get something done. I don't want to keep, doing reporting and data tracking. Like, I want to actually do something, right? And I think that's what they all went to school for, is to make an impact. But now they're sitting here, writing these reports and tracking data, and then they kind of see, especially the ones who work in consulting, that a lot of times, year after year, it's just recommendations and no, no action. It'd be much better spent maybe haphazardly getting things more sustainable, and then doing the reports later on, once you find out, hey, wow, look at this, like, we measured our baseline, and now 3 years later, look how much more sustainable we are based on these, these metrics. And I would love to see more of that happening.
I want to show you. So let's say a company that you care about, or public trading company. Do you want to name one, or should I?
Let's say Tesla.
Okay, let me see if Tesla's in. Oh, it is Tesla's. Or it could be, let's see. Okay,
How about say another company I'm a big fan of, Apple.
let me show you. But as you can see, our system does not go make up stuff. There is no fluff here. It will actually go and say, oh, what about, this is what the industry is doing. And it will also reference, as you can see here,
All of the reports,
every bit of information where this answer has come from.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, what is Apple's sustainability strategy? So Apple, on the other hand, which I know we have the information on, this information, if you asked in ChatGPT or Bard, it would not give you specifics as to exactly what they're doing to eradicate waste, exactly, but we can go even deeper. The next question, we can go even deeper, such as, what is their packaging strategy? Apple has significant strides in reducing plastic content in their packaging by 2025. And you can see exactly where it's come from. You can also say, what is Apple's net operating revenue? So if you were to go and do this yourself right now, to find that information, if you time yourself, it would probably, depending, oh my God, it took me a long time. So you go through 100-page reports, and then suddenly you find that information. And even if it's a very complex question, it takes even long, because you have to go and find the report and so on. Here, you've got the report. You go to that report. Let's see, it says page 11. So go to page 11, and you can see exactly where that information has come from.
Yeah,
and
it's very fascinating.
You can chart, you can see the examples, and it makes everyone's lives easier. And that's what we want to do. We want to also, and we've been very specific. If you want to ask about Taylor Swift's, latest song, we're not the right place to do that. But we are training it on specific information so that the industry can benefit from it. And we also do it by demand. So if you want to go and find out information about a particular category, you can say, OpenESG, need your help here. And can you upload all of this information? And I want to interrogate this information and get the answers I need. So it's really on demand. So we lower the infrastructure cost for everyone. Not only that, but we are also doing it for large corporates that want to focus on their actual business, or serving their core business units and lines of revenue. So we help them really with an infrastructure to focus on sustainability and ESG, so that they can can complement what they're doing already.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's really awesome to see when things can, especially with AI, everybody talks about how much more efficient people can become and companies can become. And I think this would be a great example to really help maximize, because I will say there's a shortage of total available talented ESG professionals right now. So helping to maximize their efforts and help things go forward to be great. I do want to shift a little bit to talking about advice to founders, right? So there's a lot of different things that we could go after, but I think maybe the first thing I'd be curious to ask you about is, what is your advice to people who are thinking about starting something and they have maybe several ideas on what they want to do? How do you recommend that they go about testing to ensure that, are they working on, is it going to work? Is it going to be impactful? Is it going to solve a problem? Like, what are the things that they should do at the fundamental beginning of the process to ensure that they're not spending their energy on something that is useless?
So the first thing is, you have to have, especially if you want to build a global business, and you have, and I'm sure that everyone wants to build a global business that that serves lots of customers. So the first thing one should ask is, how big is this market? Is it served? And if it's not served, what can be done? So that's one thing that I would definitely ask. If that problem is very much got a massive target, sort of addressable market. The other thing is it timing? Is the timing right? Am I building this company at the right time? And I have to say, before, when the supply chain AI company, it was almost the wrong time, because the will internationally was not there. It was pre-COVID. People didn't really care that much to know their global supply chains until they realized all their PPE was coming from one place on the planet, or their medical goods. And there was a dependence problem. So suddenly the entire supply chain world became the heroes of the story, because the supply chain world has been saying, look, we need to know where our products come from. And now consumers want to know, regulators want to know, everyone wants to know, for self-sufficiency purposes. And everyone understands the language of self-sufficiency and security for the community. So finally, the team. We can have the best ideas, massive market, and timing can be right, but it's also the team. And I learned from some of the amazing VCs in Silicon Valley that have invested in my company, and also I've learned from over the years, is sometimes you have to change out your team to achieve that mission. So you have to make sure you have the right people to deliver. It's like a competition. When you're in a sporting competition, you pick the best team to go and win the competition. So that's how, as a CEO, I look at it from a perspective of, do I have the right team in front of me? And if I don't, I'll make sure I do. So it's really about, and as the founder particularly, you really want to make sure that the team is really fitting for the mission.
Yeah, I think that the team thing, obviously I work in talent, so I'm a little biased to talk about these things, but I would say it's very interesting to hear you bring this up in particular, because I think that it's difficult when you're building a climate company, in particular focused on ESG, right? You want to be very conscious to be a company that also internally is focused on the S and the G, right? Of how you take care of your people. But there's times where I've talked to some founders where they realize that even though like they want to be very empathetic to taking care of the people, and they realize that the people in the business want something different, or what they want in the outcome they're hoping to achieve is completely different than the company's, right? Maybe the company pivoted, maybe they kind of slipped through the interview process somehow. But it's unjust to keep them around and to not get them in the right companies, because they're not going to be fulfilled and you can't achieve your mission, right? And there's obviously, you only get so many shots, right? When you're raising money, you have to get it right over the course of that timing, and then you have to raise again, right? So it's important to make sure you have the right people, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Any particular advice on when you're building, especially at the very beginning, right? There's so many things to do. There's a lot of opportunities, and you're maybe not necessarily 100% certain of the market focus. How do you decide what to focus on? Do you have a framework for helping people rank, hey, this is like really important now, but I should focus on this later? Like, is there a certain way in those early stages that you recommend people to focus on the things that really matter?
Totally. I definitely think taking time to research in the very beginning. So last year, we literally, I took what I was going to put in a property into the business, and so did my co-founders, and we just focused on experimentation, research, and that is okay. That's so important, so that when you keep hearing the same problems, the pain points. So we decided to focus on our pain points that the industry kept repeating to us. And especially with the advent of generative AI, we could solve that pain point. So that's so important to know, to have the timing right as to when to launch, and go actually even before launching, to build the right product for your community, for your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very helpful. I think the one thing I have noticed is that a lot of founders do not spend the proper time to do product market fit, especially in climate, because it's usually a moment where they're like, oh my gosh, like I need to work on climate. I realize like how endangered my neighborhood is where I grow up or whatever. And they just start doing something, and then they don't realize that maybe this isn't actually an impactful problem to solve, or maybe the underlying issue is something else. But you need to also make money, right? If you're going to actually achieve it, because otherwise it's a nonprofit, right? And yes, there's room and space for those, but to really scale something, it's gonna probably not be a nonprofit organization in many cases. You talked about having some good advice from your investors. Can you talk about the process of raising money and advice to founders in that process?
Absolutely. So as a co-founding team, we divide and conquer. One of my co-founders focuses on all our customer relationships, and I love spending time with all our customers. But we divide and conquer. He spends his time really surfacing customers, and then my other co-founder, he spends all his time making sure that he looks at every detail of the product and the technology, and making sure that it's secure, it's private, and all the bits you have to think about from a security perspective, and also making sure that it is the latest state-of-the-art technology, because you don't want to use a product that's a tool. Let's say Accenture, by the way, said no to a particular company out there in the market because they're built on ChatGPT. And basically, if you silo yourself into one technology, you might have customers saying, we can't work with you. And that's so important to note. So we have a particular strategy around that. And we work with all the LLMs because we think that's the right thing to do. It makes us a sustainable business, and long-term, we can service lots of customers. And then I focus really with our time as a business working with investors who can help us scale. And our investors are global. It's really, I'm from Mongolia, but I was brought up of course, in London, but lived in America, lived in Europe and Korea and a few different countries. And I believe that it's so important to have a global perspective. I've worked with Middle Eastern companies, African companies. So my time is really spent speaking to our investors, seeing how they can help us. Remember, when speaking with investors, they have to be able to help. They're there to make a return on their investment. And they probably have networks, they have not just capital, but they will have tools that can help you scale. So I spend my time making sure that they're the right fit, and also that, that their particular beyond capital can bring their other value adds, can bring in so much more value to help us, make a return on their investment.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the type of conversations that I spend my time on.
What was there any particular things, if you could share, with during because I'm not totally familiar with how much money you've raised or whatnot, but with the process, were there any particular things that were very valuable to help get the investors to say, you know what, we're willing to, to write a check for this at the early stages? Was it a certain amount of traction? Any particular things that really helped you get moving and to a point where investors said, this is sufficient traction for us to invest in?
Yeah, totally. Investors really care about timing. They really care that they care about the target market, total addressable market, and they care about the team. They only really care about those three things, because that's what will help them get what they're looking for, which is, if they're a fund, to return, to be the investment that help them achieve their goals, or if you're an angel investor, to help them see a return on their investment. For us, it's really been our laser focus on our customers and our obsession, making sure suppliers can put in their information so quickly, so seamlessly, and the insights from that. So there's a company called Canva, which everyone might use to create graphics. The founder, one of the investors, mentioned to us that she obsessed over the fact that a hairdresser should be able to create a graphic design within 5 minutes. And that was the obsession. Our obsession as a team, and literally, is making sure that suppliers can put in their information so seamlessly, so quickly, and without friction. Because especially if they have all the information at hand, they should be able to fill it out quickly. We'd even like to get to the point where it is automated. As long as we can plug into all their workflows, it should actually be able to autofill. That's how sophisticated we want our platform to be, and we're getting there, which is very exciting.
I think it's maybe, it's not necessarily a side tangent, but it's something that's not necessarily the core of the show, but it's you bring it up, which is the customer experience and the customer, I guess you could say user experience, right? And I think that obviously, as you can see, I'm a fan of Apple. I think this is something that a lot of climate tech founders should be considering, because especially in the case, obviously it's for everybody, but especially in the case of working directly with the consumers, you need to make it very easy, because there are a lot of people who are skeptical of using these things, and it might take extra time. And if it's not a beautiful experience, if it's not something that makes you feel the same way when you open that iPhone box, you're probably not going to get a lot of people hooked on it, right? And you want people to really appreciate that experience, because it is extremely, extremely important to ensure that the users really enjoy what they're seeing.
So I'll show you our product. It's designed actually with the customer at hand. And actually, what a lot of people don't realize is that on the other side is probably a female administrator on the factory floor or in the office of the factory. And so we've built the system and really the sustainability ID so that it is so beautiful. Literally, I feel like I'm on Instagram when I'm using it. And that's how beautiful it had to be for me to feel like, oh yeah, I'm happy to do this. And so it's so seamless. And of course, there are bits of it where the data verification, that's so important, so we can trust the information going. But we've designed it so it's incredibly, actually beautiful. That was one of the requirements to the product design team, who are amazing. It has to be beautiful. I need to feel as though I'm using Instagram, because most people spend all their days on social media. We're used to this, and we need that transferred to our experience as a product.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's extremely underrated, and in many cases, a lot of people, they don't think about it, especially if you've got a lot of science people in climate. You need to make sure that the end users are enjoying the experience. We're running out of time at the end here. So I guess maybe just one last thing I would like to ask is generally what areas are you excited about inside of climate for people to build companies in? What are the big opportunities from what you can see?
The market is so expansive and there's so much that needs to be solved. So much actually in every market, there's a huge opportunity to build something. So I think there's a leveler right now. The entire global economy, anyone who you could be from Mongolia and you can create a global business right now if you go and seize the opportunity. So the point is you can start now and you can build something as long as it serves a particular problem and it is, you get the capital and you know exactly what you need to do for your customers. I would say this is the best time to build a company in the climate, sustainability, ESG space. And the more the better, because like nature, we need competition. We need the best product to win, and we need those who deeply care about it, are knowledgeable about it to win.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I've mentioned several times on my side as well here, making it has to be a really big impact that you can make, but at the same time, there's a lot of opportunities for small impact in a local community. I think that sometimes that is overlooked. So don't want to underplay the necessity of a lot of people doing things, because if there's something great and maybe it is done on a smaller scale, but you're still doing it, and then you recognize, oh, maybe actually we could do this on a bigger scale, it could be a better opportunity. So I appreciate that. And I like the competition side. I think there's a lot of it's very important to be kind of searching out for these new things that really are the best solution so that we can use them, because there's always going to be new things. So let's keep an eye out for those. Any final thoughts or kind of calls to action for the listeners?
Yeah, totally. Well, if anyone wants to collaborate and work with us, if you want to understand how generative AI can help you as a business become even more powerful, literally we call it sustainability superpowers. If you want sustainability superpowers, get in touch, and we've got an amazing team in America. We've also got teams in other places in Europe, Canada, and so let's get in touch, and please email me directly if you have any questions at t@openesg.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Silas. Take care. Bye.